Welcome to Brain Health Tuesdays. Brain Health Tuesdays is a collaboration between AARP Massachusetts and the Alzheimer's Association to provide tips on how to incorporate the association's new 10 healthy habits for brain health into your everyday life. Hello, everyone. We have people from all over the country joining us, so please put in chat where you are watching this from. I'm Sam Dockenvich, a volunteer with the AARP Massachusetts Speakers Bureau. AARP maintains a deep focus on the health, financial security, and personal fulfillment of people 50 and over and their families. You'll find that focus reflected in our offerings, our resources, and in our advocacy. AARP just wrapped up a month-long series for caregivers in May. I had the pleasure of doing two of the webinars, one on the AARP 6 Pillars of Brain Health and another on downsizing and decluttering. You can find the recordings and all of our past events at the AARP Massachusetts YouTube page. Please become a subscriber so you won't miss a thing. To keep up with all we are working on and offering, you can go to aarp.org/local, LOCAL, wherever you are in the country. Do check out the AARP Brain Health Resource Center at aarp.org/brainhealth, one word, no space, where we offer lots of tips, tools, and brain health information. Today's topic is preventing brain injury is a lifelong endeavor, presented by Doreen Grasso. Doreen Grasso is the Education and Program Manager for the Brain Injury Association of Rhode Island, or BIARI. Doreen has been in the field of education for over 30 years. Her initial focus at BIARI was working with Rhode Island schools to increase brain injury awareness and educate staff about the effects of concussion on youth and its prevention, as well as return to play school learn protocols. Doreen's role has now expanded to include collaboration with multiple state agencies to educate a variety of stakeholders on brain injury and its interaction with diverse populations. Now it's over to you, Doreen. I know that we're all looking forward to your presentation.
Thank you so much, Sam, and thank you for having me. I'm delighted to be here today. Let me just share my screen here. Okay, thank you for that moment there for transitioning. So my name is Doreen Grasso. I'm the Education and Program Manager for the Brain Injury Association of Rhode Island, otherwise known as BIARI. The Brain Injury Association of Rhode Island is dedicated to increasing the awareness of brain injury and its consequences, and we provide education to prevent brain injury and enhance the quality of life for those affected by brain injury. So how do we work to prevent brain injury in our lives? We have certain safety measures, and we also educate on those safety measures here at the Brain Injury Association. We want to spread awareness, and we advocate for laws and protections for brain injury. And if a brain injury does occur, BIARI is there to support those who survive brain injury and their caretakers. So let's just start from the beginning. What is brain injury? So a brain injury is any type of brain damage that occurs after birth. It's not hereditary, nor congenital, nor degenerative. So the brain injury may be acquired in various ways. So here's a visual here. An ABI, or acquired brain injury, can be obtained in a number of ways. It could be a stroke, it could be tumors, could be disease in the brain, an infection, toxins, which also include alcohol, drugs, and chemicals, a lack of oxygen, that's for instance, anoxia or hypoxia, or it could be a traumatic brain injury, which could be opened or closed, otherwise known as a TBI. So ABI includes both non-traumatic and traumatic brain injuries. A TBI, or traumatic brain injury, is an acquired brain injury. So a TBI is a subset of an ABI. And it results from an external injury or blow that affects the brain. So that could be an open head injury where the skull is penetrated, or a closed head injury. I like different visuals, so this kind of breaks it down a little bit more scientifically. So you have your non-traumatic on there on the left, And we also have here an open brain injury. It could include assaults, falls, accidents, abuse, surgery. Gunshot wounds would also fall into that category. And then when we look at the closed brain injury, that talks about the internal shearing and pressure on the brain cells. That could also be assaults, falls, accidents, and abuse. And when we mean abuse, it could be any type, from shaken baby syndrome to child abuse, domestic violence, intimate partner violence, all the way to elder abuse. And then the brain injury also concludes concussion, which is a mild brain injury. We're going to talk about that in a moment. So the CDC says a concussion is a type of traumatic brain injury, or MTBI. The M stands for mild, caused by a bump or a blow or a jolt to the head or a hit to the body that causes the head and brain to rapidly move back and forth. So the sudden movement can cause the brain to bounce around or twist in the skull and create chemical changes in the brain, sometimes stretching and damaging brain cells. So you have like your brain cell, your neuron, it has like a myelin sheath on it. So it twists and breaks. Some chemicals can get in and some chemicals can get out. So we have a metabolic cascade of events going on there. So how does it happen sometimes? So there's mechanisms. You hit something, an object in motion stays in motion until acted upon right there. So we have the coup, which is if your head of impact, like you hit the front of your head, that's where your injury is, where that initial area of impact is. Or a contra coup, which you hit your head so hard that your brain bounces back and you get the injury on the opposite side. So can you guess how many brain injuries, how many concussions are recorded in Rhode Island each year? Just get a number in mind. Oops, for some reason it's not. Rhode Island has over 14,000 traumatic brain injuries reported each year. So it's actually approaching 15,000. And the numbers are going up. We don't necessarily think that the numbers are increasing. We think that because of the spreading of awareness and more education, that more people are reporting that. There is a Rhode Island TBI registry in our state since 2007, where all the brain injuries diagnosed in emergency rooms and hospitals, they're mandated to put it into the registries within 14 days. So that 14,000 we think is very reported, because only the hospitals are required to report brain injuries. So if people go to a walk-in clinic or their pediatrician or their general practitioner, that's not recorded. So those numbers are easily higher. So there are three types of traumatic brain injury, or TBI. Most of them, about 80%, happen with a TBI or a mild TBI or concussion. Moderate is between 10 to 13%, and severe is between 7 to 10%. And the moderate and severe could be both open or closed TBIs. So usually they measure it by if they're the loss of consciousness, amnesia. They use the Glasgow scale, which gives you a measurement of eye response, verbal response, and motor response. And that's all part of a neuro workup that a doctor would do. Tools in the toolbox, they would say. So here in Rhode Island, the main focus today and on here is mainly in traumatic brain injury. We have a traumatic brain injury state action plan that's in place, and they run every 5 years. So when we look at the brain itself, there are lobes. Different parts of the brain have different functions. Like we always say, the frontal lobe here, I always say, is the command center. It runs everything. You know, there's problem solving and judgment, emotional traits, all sorts of planning. Temporal lobe, understanding language, memory, hearing, learning, feelings. Parietal lobe with the senses, visual perception, math, reading, and writing. The occipital lobe is your visual area and reading. The cerebellum could be that coordination and balance, and your vestibular. And then the brainstem having the main core of running your body with the senses and reflections and digestion and swallowing. So we always say that a brain injury is like a fingerprint or a snowflake. No two are exactly alike. So each brain injury is unique in its symptoms, its experiences, and its outcomes. And it depends on the severity and the location, where in the brain were things happening and get hurt. And then people that usually a concussion remedies itself, which is a mild brain injury within that 3 to 4 weeks. So it's usually short-term symptoms. I say usually because some people go beyond that. And then the person with more moderate severe might have more severe injuries that last longer or may threaten have them for the rest of their lives. So there are a variety of different types of symptoms that someone might have, from headaches and sensitivity to light, or very often sensitivity to sound, but it could also be irritability or dizziness or memory and brain fog. So broken down here, we have the symptoms broken down into cognitive, physical, and socio-emotional impairments. Cognitive could be cognitive fatigue, memory loss, attention, poor judgment, comprehension, those processing skills, time awareness, and sometimes speech. Physical might be, again, decreased physical stamina, motor function issues, sensory issues, vestibular imbalance issues, onset seizure disorder in some cases. Sleep disturbances, I put in red because sometimes you see that in its own separate category because that can affect a lot of other things in your life. And then just your basic lack of energy and fatigue because your brain is really trying to repair itself. What doesn't get a lot of attention sometimes is that socio-emotional or behavioral impairments that might occur. Awareness of self and others, poor social skills or emotional regulation and behavior, mental health issues, could be increased frustration and irritability and depression. But also know that once you have a brain injury, a traumatic brain injury, if you have any kind of pre-existing condition in anxiety, depression, learning disability, a traumatic brain injury can exacerbate those symptoms. So I looked at this for the first time a few years ago when we were looking at distracted driving and senior TBIs and what happens in those moderate and severe TBIs. And this was quite stunning to me. A 5-year outcome with people with TBI that's in a moderate to severe, 22% don't survive, 30% becomes worse. That's automatically 50%, not great at all. 22% stayed home and only 26% improved. So I thought that was a very sobering statistic. So a TBI may lead to short or long-term health problems, depending on that severity of the injury. Those who get a TBI may have health problems for at last a few days or weeks, all the way to the rest of their lives. So a person with a mild TBI usually remedies itself within that 4-week period. But there's also some people that have some TBIs, some concussions, the mild TBIs, that have PCS, which is post-concussive syndrome, where those symptoms persist well beyond normal recovery times. And then a person with moderate severe may have those more long-term or long-range effects on their lives. So this is from the Concussion Legacy Foundation outside of Boston. You know, people who are living with TBI, what you might see, and how would you know this, right? You might see someone that goes back to work. You look normal. They laugh and smile. They socialize. They go to functions. I've had a traumatic brain injury, and people go, "Well, you don't look like you had a brain injury." I said, "Well, what does that look like? Do I have to have scars? You know, if there is an accident and the healing on the outside happens, you don't see what's happening on the inside. So you don't see people that might have headaches or fatigue, that sensitivity to noise and light or blurred vision, dizziness, nausea, anxiety or depression, memory loss, or some sleep issues." So we like to call this the invisible injury. So you won't see injuries on top there where people clearly on the outside look like they've had an accident. You know, those clear up. And so the obvious and notable signs heal. And the inside, the injured brain may still be experiencing symptoms. So many survivors that we speak to express frustration at this point because people go, "Well, you look fine. Like, what's up with that?" Or while symptoms persist. Or we also talk with employers because what does that look like? You might say, "Oh, he looks fine. He's coming into work." But you have to make sure that you match and accommodate any kind of issues that might be happening with someone post-brain injury. So this is the spectrum of life. There's, when you look at the traumatic brain injury that occurs, when you look at children, it could be, there's abuse, there's accidents, there's falling. That usually happens in the majority of brain injuries that occur. And then as kids get a little bit older, sometimes bikes are introduced. You can add all the rest, but include maybe bike accidents or things that happen in school and playgrounds when they start moving around. And then there's this time of life, we always say between 15 and 24, where everyone's in their amygdala, and they're doing kind of crazy things and risky behaviors, teens into early 20s, and they see a little bit of a spike of TBIs happening. Then throughout life, anything can occur, from falling to car accidents to assaults, a lot of different categories. But then in seniors at the end of life, we also turn around and we see a little bit of an uptick, a big uptick, not a little one, with seniors. Let's take a look at that. So that's why we're going to focus here on seniors. So do you know that seniors are one of the groups that sustain the most concussions? So here's some incidents by rate. You can see it here. You see that little spike here, right around here. I'll do it with my cursor. That happens between the 15 and 24, when kids start driving and they start doing some crazy things, and they're really not thinking about consequences. And then it kind of goes down and stabilizes. But then once you hit your senior years, we see it go up markedly. You have the admission rate for trauma with head injury goes up. The rate of moderate to severe brain injury increases, along with in-hospital death rates. So it's quite a concern. This is something from our state EMS services. When you look at the calls that happen, so it starts from the bottom up, you can see the 0 through 9. You see a little spike there between like 20 and 29, it gets larger. But when you really get to 80 and 80 plus, that's when so many calls happen with our senior population. And then when you look at the 19.3% versus the 9.7 male to female, I'm assuming there that we're extrapolating that there are more females over 80 than there are males. So the top causes of death among older adults, that number 7 is unintentional injury. So that includes your falls and your motor vehicle accidents and crashes. So when we start talking about increasing of older drivers on the road, it's 2020, the population of 55 and older continues to work and drive. 30% of Americans are 55 and older, 25% of workers, and 40 million licensed drivers 65 and over. So we've done distracted driving programs for all ages, but basically it talks about the distractions are, you have to keep anything that takes your eyes off the road, your hands off the wheel, or your mind off the task of driving. So what happens, again, even though seniors are some of the safest drivers on the road, they tend to get into a few more accidents. That could be attributed to a lot of things, but the distracted driving, like cell phones or trying to work some newfangled navigation thing in your car, can add to that as well. Let's see what else can add to that. So how may just the aging process affect you? There might be hearing loss, vision loss, conditions or diseases, diabetes, arthritis, apnea, Parkinson's, coordination and balance issues, a lack of reaction time, balance and flexibility, and medications. So let's put a lens of Alzheimer's disease on this, just to look at the 10 warning signs of Alzheimer's worksheet. So how many of these signs might overlap with traumatic brain injury and its symptoms? Think about this as you listen. I'll read them. Memory loss that disrupts daily life, challenges in planning or solving problems, difficulty completing familiar tasks, confusion with time or place, trouble understanding visual images and spatial relationships, new problems with words and speaking and writing, maybe aphasia, misplacing things, losing the ability to retrace steps, decreased or poor judgment, withdrawal from work or social activities, and changes in mood or personality. All of these can also be signs of brain injury. So think about if both of these occurring at the same time, how difficult it would be to try to determine which is which. There seems to be a lot of research that's going on, continued research and progress being made. The Brain Injury Association of America talks about how Alzheimer's and TBI are related. So every brain injury is unique, and sustaining a TBI doesn't necessarily mean that an individual is invariably going to get one symptom or associated disease. But in decades of research, they've established the relationship definitely between moderate and severe traumatic brain injury and Alzheimer's. So the studies have found there's no single evidence that a single mild TBI will increase a dementia risk. One study found that individuals who had moderate traumatic brain injury had 2.3 times increase of the risk of developing Alzheimer's, and severe 4.5 times greater. So individuals who have sustained multiple TBIs have a higher risk of developing Alzheimer's. Also, people who have multiple TBIs have a higher risk of CTE. And CTE, just like Alzheimer's, involves a tau protein as well. So when people who have CTE show some Alzheimer's-like symptoms, it'd be very interesting to see how years from now, how these studies all come out. Individuals who sustained a brain injury may start experiencing cognitive impairments at an earlier stage in life. And some adults who suffer a brain injury after 55 have a higher risk of acquiring Alzheimer's disease. So when you start looking at Alzheimer's research, I delved into it a little bit. There's a lot of it out there. So the basics that I've read, the TBI is a risk factor for dementia. Having a history of TBI may accelerate dementia. Similar changes happen in Alzheimer's and mild TBI with reduced cortical thickness. And then a link between the TBI and that, I can't see because I put my face over there, APOE4 gene is likely to increase Alzheimer's. However, they all say more research is required to fully understand the association. So the bottom line is, as science advances and studies advance, the research and the progress will advance along with it. It might be quite challenging to tease out the symptoms between brain injury and other afflictions if they are happening concurrently, and a TBI may exacerbate a pre-existing condition. And what if that condition is Alzheimer's? It also requires that people self-report, and that always isn't the truest form of gaining the information. So some people kind of hold back because they don't want to admit that they're having issues. So we're going to switch focus here and talk a little bit about prevention. So what can you do to help prevent a fall that may lead to a traumatic brain injury? Well, your activity and well-being, a healthy diet, exercise, remaining active, increasing that strength and balance, staying hydrated so you don't get dizzy and fall. Falls are one of the #1 things with seniors and getting brain injuries. Use protective equipment if you're going to be in certain sports that require that, and find ways to interact with others so to avoid feeling isolated. Exercise, they find, has a direct effect on brain health as well, with all the brain experts that we've had in our conference series in the past. So keep up with your mental, your medical and your mental health. Make sure that you get your ears checked. Keep your eyes checked. Look over your medications and talk to your pharmacist about your medications. Keep in close contact with your doctor. Look for counseling services for support, or maybe support groups. And even doing some things like yoga or Tai Chi for that de-stressing. And again, kind of circling back to the driving, it's to drive or not to drive at some point. Where do you make that decision? Or where and when do you make that decision? Remember, distracted driving is, when you are on the road, you keep your eyes on the road, your hands on the wheel, and keep on the task of driving, not multitasking. If driving is not an option anymore, what are your alternatives? Are there supports available? There's technology like having groceries sent to your house. There are senior services, and as far as like shuttles and going from back and forth to places. So maybe some transportation would be it as well. So safeguard your surroundings and your home. So if you look at this home here, you see banisters and you see rails. If it's in the fall, you want to make sure things are free of wet leaves. In the winter, it's snow and ice. Here in New England, ice is a big contributor to senior falls, slip and falls. You want to make sure that you can maybe put some bar systems in your home if you need to grab onto something, getting in and out of the shower, other areas of your home. The toilet seats as well, getting up and down. You want to make sure that you have those slip-proof rugs inside your shower. Make sure that you have things available to you, very close and handy. And if you're going to use a step stool, move everything that you use more often close to you. But if you're going to use a step stool, try to find one that has grips, on the bottom that stay, and a hand holding area there. And again, when looking at your home, start thinking about decluttering everything. Think about where your walkways are. We want to maybe pull up some of those rugs if you're not lifting your feet up well, or if you must have a rug, make sure that you tack it down. Start looking at these walkways. What are the most high traffic areas in your home, and making sure they're free of debris so you can get by and lessen that risk of a fall. You also want to make sure that you have lighting around. So whether that be a lamp that you can touch, waking up, or going up the stairs, in the hallways, or maybe even a nightlight. All are helpful. So what happens if you or someone you love does get a brain injury? So the Brain Injury Association, we have a resource facilitation program at the Brain Injury Association of Rhode Island that offers comprehensive approach to support individuals with brain injury and their families. Ours is run by Colleen McCarthy in our office. So she also helps identify individual resources and services that our community and our state supports, assisting individuals with increasing access and giving them the tools to make informed decisions, assist individuals in advocating effectively for their needs and engaging the community, outreach to hospitals, and providing education for caregivers, hospitals, and rehabilitation facility staff, assist individuals with the completion of medical legal forms, and collect data to identify trends so we can give it back to the Department of Health and we can try to make changes in our state. So when we're together, we work together, we're stronger, so you could check out our website at biari.org, or look at our YouTube channel we have archived conference series and talks there for both teachers and other agencies. What happens if, you have an individual in your life that has a brain injury? We can certainly help you, and recommend support groups, whether you're in our state or other states. I would definitely recommend that you look up your Brain Injury Association affiliate in your state. Okay, so we have a couple of moments for some questions. I thank you for your attention, and I'll take it offline here, and I believe Annie is going to look at the questions.
Thank you so much, Doreen. Yeah, we do have a few questions that's come in. I think just some clarity. What is CTE? What does it stand for?
Thank you. Chronic traumatic encephalopathy. So, and if anyone have seen like Concussion, the movie with Will Smith there, he was kind of like discovered it with NFL in Pittsburgh for the Pittsburgh Steelers. So you can look up CTE. There's a Concussion Legacy Foundation. It has the largest brain bank in the world up here in Boston. And it talks about what happens with multiple concussions. And that tau protein clumps in the brain and causes a lot of problems you see it a lot in athletes with impact sports.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
One of the questions that someone asked is, are there actually tests that determine how much damage there is, and by the symptoms?
Right. There's a whole battery, and some people actually say, oh, gee, they didn't give me an MRI. They wouldn't give me a CAT scan. And there's some things that don't show up. It doesn't mean that they aren't done. I've had brain MRIs. I had a severe concussion, but I was in the hospital for 5 days. So they certainly did some CAT scans and MRIs, but sometimes it doesn't show up, even though there's some damage to the brain there. So that's always, yes, there are some things to do. There are certain tests that you can do, like athletes will take like a baseline test, and so they'll do post tests. There are all sorts of things that neurologists will do in their office about batteries of tests. So yes, I think it's a combination of all of them, I would say. A lot of tools in the toolbox.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
You know, and someone else was just asking, you know, is there things that we can do to speed up recovery with the TBI?
Yes, that's a very good question. You know, there are things that you do, but there are things that you don't do. You know, like I said, mild exercise is found to really help, you know, and we don't want people locked up in a dark room anymore, you know, with the lights off. You don't want to use a lot of your screens in the beginning, but they want people to get up, get moving, and get socialized as soon as possible, even though they're not up to full potential for work or school. So that's really changed a lot in the past, you know, couple of decades, that they are finding exercise, as long as you don't exacerbate symptoms. So as long as if you start doing things and you start feeling those symptoms again, that's where you stop and you fall back down to the next level. And you make sure that you interact with your physician and doctors. I can't state that enough. I know so many people say, "Oh, I'll be fine," and then down the road, they get issues, or we got phone calls and say, "Yeah, I got this concussion half a year ago, and now I'm still finding that I have this." So that happens very often. So be open about it, or whether it be with your family or your employer, or, you know, so people can help you.
You know, I know sometimes, so many times, young families are, you know, their children are just, you know, getting out and learning how to ride their bike, and, you know, they're becoming very active with their friends. And, you know, I'm just always wondering, some families have had difficulty even being able to pay for a helmet. You know, is there any nonprofit organizations or, you know, businesses that it can help pay for helmets for protection?
Yeah, we have done some helmet things in the past with the Brain Injury Association. I would start there and then look, because I know people from different states, sometimes their highway transportation board will have something, but I would see what's available in your state. Maybe just Google free helmets or a way that you can get reduced helmets. It's kind of like the same people who help you with the car seats. You know, they work hand in hand. So I've worked with the EMS in our state, and they do stuff like that as well, with helmets and car seats.
Very good. So someone was just asking about diet. You know, is it the correlation? Can diet be really beneficial for recovery from a mild concussion, that type of thing?
Well, I'm not a doctor, and nor a dietitian, but I always think a healthy diet is great for everything. There's some people that claim that has really helped them to change their diet and cleared up some of the brain fog that has happened and occurred after a traumatic brain injury. But, you know, I would look up articles about that, but I can't say through personal experience that I know of something that is a tried and true, follow this diet exactly, but I think it's pretty common sense, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, we know that diet and exercise is what's good for our heart, what is good for our brain. It just allows us to, you know, continue to and be overall strong as we age.
I know someone who swears she went vegan afterwards, and she swears that helped her brain injury afterwards. It was pretty severe, but she said it really, she would rather do that than take the drugs. So, but that's one case.
You know, so it looks like we are at the bottom of the, you know, the half an hour that we have. So you know, I just wanted to thank you, Doreen, so much for this very in-depth presentation in, you know, a short period of time. But, you know, one of the questions that someone did ask, and I think I know the answer, but they were just wondering if the Brain Injury Association is you know, throughout the different states. If I'm correct, it's all over the country. If I'm correct, is that true?
We have affiliates all over the country. Some states, I think some states have lost their Brain Injury Association, but that's changing. So things are coming back. So I would just check with your individual state and see what resources are available. Here in Rhode Island, it's a little simpler because we're small, so we can get to everywhere within an hour. But people are there to help you. So there's the Brain Injury Association, and I can recommend, and NASHIA, which is the National Administration of State Head Injury Administrators, NASHIA. That also has a lot of information about brain injury, and they have some free videos to look at as well in their archives.
Great, thank you so much.
Well, thank you for having me. It's very important to increase the awareness because, you know, the best way to deal with brain injury is not to get one in the beginning.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Well, I do want to just again say thank you. I want everybody to know that this session has been recorded, and Doreen will be sharing her PowerPoint with everybody who's participating. And again, I just want to thank everybody for being on our Brain Health Tuesdays program. And we hope that each one of you will attend next week's program. And so we're just, again, so thank you so much. And just remember that the Alzheimer's Association is here for everyone 24 hours a day. And our telephone number is 1-800-272-3900. And if you'd like additional, resources or information on supporting someone around driving or, safely living in their home, we have web pages at alz.org for you to look at. So, so thank you so much again, Doreen. And
Thank you. I put my email in the chat as well if people needed to contact me. Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. Hope everybody has a good day, and thank you.